Hello and welcome. Today, let's journey back to a time when getting on a plane wasn't just about getting from point A to point B, but was a grand event. We're diving into the story of an airline that became a true icon, a symbol of an entire era, Pan American World Airways. Our way into this story starts right here, with this vintage first-class menu from 1964. The beautiful cover art alone gives you a little taste of a world of far-flung, exotic destinations. But it's what this menu represents, the whole experience, that really tells the story of Pan Am's golden age.
You know, that one sentence just captures a feeling that has pretty much vanished from air travel today. For the people who flew Pan Am, it was a real occasion, one defined by glamour, by sophistication, and a genuine sense of wonder. It wasn't just a flight. It was like arriving in a different world.
So, let's explore this taste of the sky, the experience itself, and the powerful memories it created, which have lasted for decades, long after the airline itself was gone. And that bond, it was so strong that former employees and loyal passengers have held on to mementos for over half a century. And I'm not just talking about postcards. People have kept their uniforms, their flight bags, even entire sets of Pan Am china, all carefully preserved. That just speaks volumes, right? It shows a kind of attachment that very few companies ever managed to create.
But here's the thing. Pan Am was way more than just glamour. It was an airline of empire. Behind all that nostalgia, there's a story of huge corporate ambition, one that wanted to shape the world in its own image.
And right at the heart of all that ambition was its founder, a man named Juan Trippe. When that famous Pan Am building opened up in New York back in '63, for Trippe, it wasn't just another office building. No, he saw it as a monument to American power and influence. For him, Pan Am was basically an extension of the American empire.
And this whole idea was just woven right into the company's DNA. The spirit of adventure, that was their brand. But things like humanitarian aid and sponsoring huge global events, well, that was just brilliant public relations. It helped project this image of a kind, benevolent global citizen. It was all a very, very carefully crafted strategy to build not just an airline, but a true worldwide presence. Now, on the front lines of this global expansion were the employees, and that includes a really unique and trailblazing group of women who became the face of Pan Am in Asia, the Nisei stewardesses.
So the term Nisei, what does that actually mean? Well, literally, it refers to a second-generation Japanese American. But for Pan Am, it was more of a convenient corporate label. You see, this program, which ran from 1955 all the way to 1972, also included women who were third generation, some who were Japanese nationals, and even women from other Asian backgrounds. So the name stuck, but the reality? It was a lot more complicated than that. And make no mistake, this was a deeply strategic move. These women were hired to serve a market in Asia that was just booming after the war. In a way, they became these informal diplomats for the US, really leaning into that model minority stereotype that was starting to emerge. The program also tapped into a Western fascination with the exotic, all while giving these young women a pretty rare chance for world travel and, a more sophisticated, urbane kind of life. But for the women themselves, the job was a complex balancing act. They were constantly navigating between this glamorous public image and the often really challenging realities of their role. On the one hand, they were often seen through these very specific stereotypes, like the submissive, loyal Madame Butterfly. But the reality was a whole different story. On those long, round-the-world flights, the Nisei stewardess was often the only one who worked the entire trip, while other crews would rotate in and out. This J-language position, as they called it, could be incredibly lonely. They had to deal with a role that often just mushed together Japanese and Japanese-American identity, all while they were trying to chase their own dreams of moving up in the world.
And the selection process itself, it could be intensely scrutinizing, and it definitely carried some racial undertones. Just listen to this personal account from one applicant. She remembers this intense fear, not just about passing some physical test, but about having a physical trait, one she saw as a racial flaw, judged under this huge corporate microscope. But these women were not just passive figures in this story. No way. For years, the Honolulu base where they worked was basically a closed system, and promotions to the senior role of purser, they were totally blocked. But then, one stewardess decided to fight back. She actually wrote up a letter citing racial discrimination, got signatures from over half of her colleagues, and took it straight to the president of Pan Am. And in 1971, they won. They won the right to become pursers, breaking a huge barrier.
So that exclusive Nisei program ended in 1972, and Pan Am itself flew its very last flight in 1991. But even though the airline is gone, it is so far from forgotten. The memory of it and the entire era it defined is still incredibly vivid.
I mean, you look at images like this and it's pretty easy to see why, isn't it? The vibrant colors, the feeling of space, that sense of a special occasion. It all brings back this powerful nostalgia for what so many people call the golden age of travel. A time when an airline could really feel like an empire in the sky.
And the airline's legacy? Oh, it's still alive and kicking in some really tangible ways. That iconic blue flight bag became such a status symbol that people were actually selling counterfeits on the black market in Tokyo. You've got alumni groups that hold conventions to this very day. And that logo, that symbol of a whole era of style and class, you can still find it on replica merchandise in trendy shops all over the world. It really seems like Pan Am just can't die.
And so all of this leaves us with a question, right? The story of Pan Am is definitely one of glamour, but it's also a story of corporate power, of racial politics, and deep personal struggles. Its enduring appeal really makes you wonder about nostalgia itself. Why do we hold on so tightly to certain images of the past? And what do those memories really tell us about our present?
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the history of Pan American World Airways.
We'd love it if you'd subscribe for more explainers that dig into the stories that have shaped our world. We really hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.